All right. There are leadership coaches, and then there are leaders who've actually sat in the chair. Hannah Bauer has been a CEO and currently a former board chair. And today, she's transforming organizations worldwide through Maxwell leadership. Hannah, welcome to the Go4CEO channel. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me, John. Excited to be having this conversation with you this morning.
I love it. I love it. Well, I love the background. I'm always, I'm an admirer of photos and books and obviously your own book here that I see there. It's really interesting, right? What we surround ourselves with. I'm still a little bit holiday-ish on my side. We still haven't brought it down yet, but using this space to do the podcast. But look, you're the main feature today, and we always love starting with kind of the ideation, right? Where did this, process start for you? Were you a corporate person? Have you always been an entrepreneur? Give us a little bit of that taste of where Hannah Bauer came from, and then that way we'll speak of other areas that you influence now.
Sure. Well, if I would say it's like a lot of it started out of desperation, really
Okay.
just trying to come up with solutions to a lot of the problems and really learning from mistakes. I think the initial desperation was that desire to live, and that was where a lot of my the hardnomics and the frameworks come is from surviving a heart disease. So it was just the fighting for the breath. When it's the heart is the beat. If the heart's not beating, nothing else goes in
Mm,
place. So a lot of it is learning to live in an uncertain moment because they didn't know what was going to cost the episodes. They didn't know. I mean, again, when a heart attack comes, it's not something you expect. So things caught by surprise. So a lot of my looking and observation and in trying to find a normal within with something that's not normal really shaped what I'm doing today. Outside of that, then I get into into business, being an entrepreneur, found that a lot of the things in entrepreneurship felt like a heart attack. So, like, if you're really looking at it, between the stress, leadership, teams, all the things that you have to keep up with, the culture aspect, there's all this vital signs and essence to an organization. And then I found myself actually going through a lot of the similar symptoms that I did, except this time I didn't have a heart disease. I was being exercising leadership. And so
mm.
this is where my frameworks, and I had to go back to the beginning to understand how could I not only help my current team, them come up with the solutions, but really this was something that not only helped our organization, but later on it started to help our industry. And it was utilizing a simple framework. It was really taking a look at the internal alignment, taking care of yourself so you can have that external execution. And that's where the processes and systems came into place. Understanding that failure and mistakes are part of progress. They really are. That's part of my story. And obviously I'm alive here today. So that I'm a result of innovation and I'm a result of collaboration. And that's because before the innovative part happened, there were a lot of mistakes and failures that went along the way, even in the treatment and trying to come up with a solution. But eventually, because the great professionals learned from those failures, it gave birth to innovation that later on, when I learned what it meant 20 years later, it had saved 3,000 other children after me. So I
Mm.
100% believe in the frameworks and the methods, and really is something that I'm excited to bring here to leaders and organizations, and for having this conversation with you.
Well, it makes me super curious because obviously from your own scenarios and struggles and things that you had to go through, you breathed this beautiful book and the knowledge of kind of what you're sharing with other companies. In a similar vein, over the last 2.5 years, I had a chance to write my own book, and I love the things you're talking about, frameworks and alignment, which is chapter 2, right? So big. So. When it comes to really dealing with businesses and starting to put that together, right? What was the thought there then? You'd struggled, you went through these things, you rebirthed yourself, kind of a phoenix per se, right? When you think about then now, okay, hey, let me go on my own and let me teach others this component that you figured out. What was that like, and where does that framework of a business, even for you, start at that scenario?
So for me, it was helping people. I always wanted to serve. I think that was one of my big aha moments was when I realized that I could be a leader, and it wasn't because of everybody, it's only certain people could be leaders, but really it was a attitude of service. So
Mm,
it's that attitude of service and the really wanting to serve others. That's where a lot of this came from. But I realized also in me wanting to serve, and as I saw amazing, great leaders serving, I also saw a common thread of burnout. Usually, when I ask great leaders, "Well, how are you?" "I'm busy." "Well, how you been?" "I've been busy." There's always this busy and never-ending sense of like I just trying to catch up is not enough. Then trying to take a breath in between incorporating and leading and all these parts. Now, again, I remember just the exact same feeling as a kid going through what really heart disease felt like, that always never enough, never being able to catch up, getting things into rhythm. So
mm,
as I looked into the framework, what would help, I realized what got me through. Again, it was in my situation, and later on, a lot of times it's ambiguity, right? I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know when the problem was going to come. And also, there was no clear cut way. This is how we're going to deal when it does come, because there was no solution in mind. So I had to, again, learn how to deal with that. But there were things I couldn't do by myself. Honestly, as a kid, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to get ready for this. It was my support system. It was the love that surrounded me. It was the people around me that encouraged, the people that around me that monitored, people, the sustainability aspect didn't come because had superpower. Really, the sustainability aspect came from the network, the ecosystem that was around me that sustained me during those times.
mm,
And I see the same way with leaders now. When I look at service in looking at teams, looking at culture, looking at frameworks, looking at alignment, key like a key factor is going to be that ecosystem, that support system, that team, that infrastructure that is there in place because you have built into, you've been intentional in building it, or you have an idea of the direction that you need to go. That's really going to help sustain during those tough times, in the times of we're having to pivot, times that we have to respond to external change, times that we have to respond to internal change. Those are the things that I'm seeing now with the framework. I had to be able to transfer that to leaders, and that's where Beat came from, and that's where Core came from.
mm. So, it's interesting. You put together this framework based on, again, your experiences, but then to translate it into the business world, to then, they say you're transferring emotion, transferring energy, right? And it sounds like you've put that into motion into a business, which is really cool, and a different way to approach things. So, was there also maybe a track record of things that maybe you accomplished that then propelled you into this, kind of coaching, masterful, consulting side of the world?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things is when when you've been in the hospital for a long time, like I spent a lot of years in the hospital. I mean, holidays. There was times where I was too high of a liability. I wasn't allowed to go to school.
Mm,
So when I got out, essentially, it's almost like getting out. Like, hey, you're normal. You got your normal card. I wanted to do everything, and I did. I went and but I wanted to do everything, and I didn't know where to start. So I started back where the only place I knew. That was the hospital. And I
mm,
started volunteering. I became a volunteer. I started serving other kids in the hospital. I started then serving other families that had family members in the hospital. And I became addicted to this part of service. I then went on to do health fairs, community health fairs, got involved in the university, got elected to the government association. So now I'm like, president of the Senate as student government in Georgia State. That introduced me to this whole other part of leadership where you're negotiating, you're able to have influence. And I started seeing not only service, but also the influence you had to make change organizational wide. So that started opening my mind on how leveraging networks, connection really came from that. And then that allowed, well, I got to serve at the state level. I then, as a business owner, got to serve at the local business association. I got to serve at the chamber. Then eventually with my business, as I started utilizing the same tools, the same service, the same looking at influence, I was elected in DC in 2014 to the American Association of Publishers, which is
Mm,
our the leading organization for the entire K through 12 education. And later on, I became chair, also elected in DC. So now I had access to the entire industry to be able to bring forth the ideas that we were already working in our own company, in our own business, and ideas that I had seen that I was able to both represent the fears, be able to go head to head with the disruption that our industry was going through, and bring this together in a way that was collaboration and facilitating solutions. But I would say the entire time, it was really, again, looking for how can we solve this current problem that we're going through, but also understanding that collaboration was needed. I needed to learn, and there were a lot of things that I didn't know. And if I would say like what really was my, like what really got me is understanding that there were things you just don't know what you don't know, and that's
mm,
okay. You just have to get in the room and be able to listen and be able to observe, and ask questions. And I believe that really that's where a lot of the where the leaders, and especially in a world where we have so much of the technology coming in, the integration, the change in needs, the change in the labor force, is going to take that leader that is going to listen, is going to observe, and is going to bring people to the table and leverage that knowledge so we can come up with solutions that are going to work for all.
mm. You're making me think a lot about, that scenario, right? So when they bring you in, is it typically an individual that says to themselves, "Hey, I really need Hannah's support, and I want to be able to have her side by side with me to, do some things that are innovative or change in leadership within the organization that they happen to be in?" Or do you work with more solopreneurs, startups? Where is kind of your, avatar, at this point of your business?
So it's been in a couple of places. It's been interesting actually. So either people are calling me because they have had a massive downgrade of income and now they're having to go lean. I'm a black belt
Mm,
in Sigma. So I'm a continuous improvement person. I mean, that's what we look for. We look at going lean, being efficient, being profitable. So I'm getting called for like we're losing our labor force. We've lost main clients. Our income is going down, and we still need to operate. Actually, we don't just need to operate. We need to evolve. So when you have limited resources, also not only having to maintain what you have, still keep it alive, your business, but
mhm.
also innovate in that part. That's where the challenge comes in. So that's where I help leaders. So usually I'm brought in by the board of directors. I'm brought in by the either the executive director or CEO to be able to work with their main team, their core team. The other opportunity that usually I come in is because like, oh, this is like amazing new grant or amazing new opportunity place that we can serve, like, but we don't think we're ready for it.
Mm,
We don't know who we need to hire. We don't know, like how will we even pursue. It's going to take capital because, it takes having that capital funding to be able to even pursue other things. Where do we need to put the money in if this is not a for sure thing? So that's where I also help in is and be able to prioritize, being able to look at the different talent pool that needs to come in to be able to go after these different opportunities that the leader is envisioning, because they've had great success and now they want to be exponential in their impact. So those are the two times I come in. Usually it's a person, the executive, the CEO that brings me in. But like I said, sometimes it's the HR team because they're looking at the usual place where it shows up is in the labor, like what either because there's been a downturn in labor, they're having to really be strategic with who they're hiring. But also in the part of the process in the system is the metrics. How do we measure? How do we prepare for the future that they're seeing? Either it could be a downturn, or it could be like we just don't know. For example, in
mm,
the industry, right, that happened in the publishing. The disruption that we went through was we were mainly a print industry. That's where books were big, right? You wanted hard
Hmm.
bound books. You wanted like the books that you can feel and touch. And then suddenly this ebook started coming in. And then the ebooks were not just ebooks. I mean, the content was even free in a sense. So when we're talking about the publishers, where the money and the treasure is the content, how do you compete with free? And it wasn't just one other publisher, it was all this silent competitors that started coming. So there was not a clear business plan because we don't know exactly how we're going to be competitive in a place now where what we hold as valuable, our content is free, and the way that we delivered it even has completely changed, and nobody really has a business plan on how to do it. So that's where my experience comes in the technology to be able to answer those questions.
It's interesting because you've had some public service type, backgrounds and interconnectedness from government to business to then, the private sector, right? So it's a confluence of all these ideas and things and experiences that makes you so well suited, right, to go into those scenarios where, like you said, change is evident, change is, needed, leadership is asked for to step up, right, and give a good direction. And it's always neat to be able to have that ability. I'm sure it brings you a lot of joy and experience, right, to be hand in hand with someone. So from that perspective, right, the business, obviously in the consulting side, it's interesting because many experienced people just don't know what to do to start. They feel like, okay, well, I'll plant my LLC flag up in the universe of social media and I'm just going to get business, right? So it looks like you were super intentional. Your network made a big difference, your alignment to certain people. So tell us a little bit about that side, right? And how are you branding? How are you executing development and those areas that, bring in business for yourself?
Sure. And I think this you bring in such a key thing because it is a point where at the beginning, especially when you're just starting out, you can either get stuck or even when you've been doing it, you've been grinding it for a bit and things are just not looking the way that you expected them to look. It's you get also stuck. That almost that analysis paralysis, even when every dollar counts, where every a time minute your hour counts, where you're having to put on different hats. So I would say the number one thing for me, and really what I learned through my entire experience, is the power of hope.
Mm,
And knowing that hope really is the catalyst for action. Sometimes people think that is like a positive thinking is, and positive thinking is, it can be very passive. It can be like, oh, things will get better one day, or, like, hey, so it's all good when things are not all good. And then we have this cognitive dissonance going on in our heads, like, how can I say everything's good when things don't feel good? Hope doesn't, you know, deny things or blinds itself. Hope is able to look realistically at a situation, realistically look at, hey, my efforts are not quite panning the way I expected them to be. However, you're right, the however, or uh, yet. That word yet that comes in the second part of that sentence. So I would say one thing is really one of my main services when I go with leaders is really able to ignite that hope. My story is one of hope. I mean, there was no solution. There was no, I mean, I had two heart attacks. I wasn't even allowed to go to school yet. You see, then almost like what, 23 years later, I'm leading
mm,
K-12 in the United States. I wasn't allowed to go to school at one point in my life. So I'm not saying this as a like, oh yeah, you gotta hope, hope thing. No, not at all. Hope definitely is part of the strategy. So as we're looking at this, I would say do not in any way, shape, or form discount the power of hope because hope finds a way when there is no way. Hope is the catalyst really to move you into action. Um, and when you're looking at a team and you don't really have solutions, sometimes we say, it's the CEO is the chief encouraging officer, but it's not encouraging because we look at the hope aspect. So
mm,
that would be the one part. A lot of times we think it's like we need one more strategy, one more process, or one more system, or another product, or another R&D, and it's not that. It is really honestly an attitude, internal attitude from the leader, being able to then also transfer. in the ability to realistically, not like, hey, I'm just going to put in a bunch of hot air to people, but realistically looking at the situations, but framing them in a way to where you're opening up your team to be able to have those very needed conversations that are both realistic, but are solution minded and solution oriented. So that's what I would how not only would I help, but that's the first place I would start. I would check, do I check up from the neck up, look at where you are and hope. And what are some of those things? I know I have made the mistake on like, oh, I'm thinking I'm like a very hopeful person. Yeah, I went through all this. How can you not be hopeful? Every day is every day above ground is a good day, right? And yet I found myself there were many areas I wasn't even looking for in solutions. I masked it by time management. Oh, I don't have the time for that, or whatever that is. But it really wasn't a time management problem. It really was a hope problem. And when I
Mm,
was able to realize the difference between that is I'm now no longer solutions for looking for solutions in this area. I started checking, well, what is my hope in that area? And realized it wasn't that I didn't have time. I actually did have time because I was putting my time in the wrong things. But if I was to be able to direct and be intentional to put my hope in that, it wasn't a matter of time. It was a matter of looking at the impossibilities or the challenges, fueling it with hope, and being able to then start testing out solutions. And not every solution is going to work. It's okay. That's part of progress. Like I said, like the innovative surgery for me, it wasn't the first one they got it. No, there was an open heart that failed. There was a heart cath that failed. There were many drugs that failed
mm.
before that. But all of those were part of the progress. And that's what gives birth to innovation.
Well, and it's interesting, as you're sharing, and what a powerful message you just shared the last few minutes there, right? Seeing kind of where you came from, the challenges that you went through, the place that you ended up with, the K through 12 influence, and now obviously being in the marketplace, in the industry, and the Maxwell Foundation, all that stuff. Would you agree? And I'm going to take this a little bit different than most interviews because you're making me think about a word I love, which is momentum, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people dig, 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 or work, 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 work. And then almost it feels like the second before momentum hits, people stop. And then
Mhm.
you have to start again to rebuild that momentum. And that's where frustration starts to kick in. So I'd love your perspective of, with this hope and the mindset of it and what you're sharing and really sharing something real, would momentum have an activating solution there as well? What's your thoughts on
Oh, yeah. Well, exhaustion
that?
is real. Tiredness is real. 24 hours and 7 days a week is real. So when all of those things are, they seem to almost like be playing against you because like I can't even think if you have tried to make a decision when you're very tired, you realize you're not making the right decisions. So momentum has and when you're able to not only recognize when you're in that momentum, but really ride that wave, it's such a relieving feeling. Um, I don't know if you've heard of Zig Ziglar, but one of the things
Hmm.
he used to use when he went on his on speaking, it was the water pump, right? The
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
so if you remember, there was a point like you gotta pump it, pump it, pump the pump, right? You gotta pump it. But if you before the water came out, if you stopped, all the pressure, all the water that had come up goes down. And it wasn't like you're picking up again where you left off. No, now you have to start again from the beginning. So that's the thing. I mean, if you think about it, in starting before, stopping before the momentum happens, because momentum really is when once you get that water all the way up to that pump, what happens? The water starts flowing and then it's a steady part. But here's the deal. You have to recognize when you have to go fast. You have to, and the ability as a leader to when you have to accelerate, when you have to decelerate. Because remember, once the water gets over that pump, the momentum to continue to put it, to do the same effort and the same strength is only going to wear you out. Well, you don't need to be doing that. And that's
Hmm.
one of the things that I see with leaders where they have gotten that momentum. But it's like, no, no, now we need to do more. If I just push more. And no, what you're doing is you're going to tire yourself out. It's not going to be more effective. And honestly, it's not going to get you ready for the next part where, the next challenge or the next opportunity that's coming in. So I would say is being able to recognize what is momentum for you? Being able to know, how would you know right now if you are in that rhythm? My problem in heart was both tachycardia, meaning it went really fast, but also it was a rhythm.
Mm,
So not only did it go fast, but there were times where it was going irregular. So it would go super fast, super low, super fast, super low. And it was out of control. So it was those high and lows uncontrollable that were out of rhythm that really tired me out, even more than the fast rhythms that were going. If you think about it, when you go on a treadmill at the gym, when you're steady, if it's a steady thing, you're hitting zone 3, zone 4, zone 5 with your heart, you're still managing it because your breathing is getting in rhythm with where your heart is. But when you stop, it even starts feeling a bit uncomfortable because
mm,
you're trying to catch up your breath with your heart, right? Because it's still like your heart is kind of going fast, but it's going slow, but then fast and slow. So the ability we recognize that there is need for the heart to go fast when you're wanting to go at higher speeds. But there's also just a need for the heart to slow down when you need to go at the lower steady speed. You cannot be at zone 5 all the time. You will have a heart attack. You will wear
mm.
yourself. And it's that with the leaders. Momentum is great. Momentum is our friend. Momentum helps us get that much more faster. But you have to understand also with momentum, you need to find your rhythm in that momentum so you're steady and you're not going to wear yourself out. On the contrary, you're going to be banking on that resilience that you have built just to get into that momentum so that you're able to not only understand how you work, but you're also in that smoothness is also when all of these other people in the partners are also able to come in. So momentum is your friend if you recognize it and if you honor it for what it is. You use it, but you also use the smoothness to be able to rest in that.
I love it. You're very inspiring. I can see where a company, a leader brings you in, just the energy that you have, the experiences, the things that you're sharing with them are so real because you've been at the brink of stuff, right? At the brink of, you know, not being around anymore and seeing the change and something not working inside your body, like you said, the catheter, whatever it was. And it's interesting, right? Your perspective is different, yet if people realized that what you're teaching is something that is universal, it's based off of true principles, right? And things that you're doing. So I love it. I think it's really cool. And for those of you out there, Go4CEO community that are trying to build something, think about what Hannah just shared with you, right? She took her viable experiences and turned them into a business, but all throughout her life, she was using stepping stones to go up the ladder, proverbial ladder of meeting the right people, connecting the right dots, aligning with the right people, and then becoming successful in different areas that landed her in this now, current situation that she's at. So, from a perspective of, building a team, or I don't know if you're running the business right now, kind of a solo consultantpreneur style, or have you been able to, or are you planning to grow any team outside of, because I know you're sitting on the Maxwell leadership side of things, but is there a team that you're building, or is it something that you individually kind of go into the business platforms yourself?
So I consider myself the strategist, and
Okay.
I have some amazing coaches and friends. So as we strategize and we look at the different gaps, I'm both able to help in understanding what are the skills that are needed, what is the gap, and serve in the strategy for that. Again, my expertise comes into systems perspective and continuous improvement. And I have other amazing team members that are really good at, for example, onboarding, HR. They're really good
Mm.
at implementing technology aspects. They're able to look at the tools. So I have a specialized team that is able to go into more detail, but I'm able to help with the strategy and able to connect them with the right people that are going to help them for what they're going to do next.
And is this team, placed as kind of 1099 independent contractors, so they help within the process of everything that you implement, or are they on your W-2, or how does that work?
Oh, I have both. So I have the ones that, that are more the remote. Some work is needed to be remote. It doesn't need to be that much that hands-on, some of the tactical stuff. And I do have people that are on 1099 that go into the business. Again, subject matter experts. I have a professor, actually, amazing. Individual genius that is able to really get down deep and gritty into the forecast and finances way more than me. You
Mhm.
definitely don't want me to go into that deep and gritty like he does. But for example, he'll be somebody that would go in person. Also, sometimes there's assessments that are needed. Sometimes there's some metric tools that are not yet developed. So I do have a team that is able to develop tools specific to the organization, looking at the industry, the sector, and the forecast. That is where they want to go, where they see it going next. Like I said, a lot of times the business plans, because ambiguity, like for example, what happened with publishing, it wasn't like, okay, well, this was happening in this is how we've dealt with it before, because there may not have been a before, but sometimes there's an adjacent industry that has, or for example,
Mm.
it was like the media industry. If you remember back when we had the cassette tapes, they went into CDs, and then we went into the single, right? You could just get the single song, and then from the single song, well, it became like, hey, you can download, and then download just the songs that I want, and then, so those things. So if you look at the evolution, the publishing print industry didn't go through that, but we were able to learn from the media what had happened with them, and in a sense to start looking at business plans like that. So I'm able to help also organizations do that, and that's what I do with my team, is looking at some adjacent industries, so looking at forecasting, looking at division, looking at what is going to go, where the trend is coming from, because we have to be aware of those trends, and some things that you may not think is your business are actually the business that you're in, or the way that the future of your business is going to look like.
Hmm. Yeah, you're making me think a lot about obviously the AI aspect of it, and how you could take large language models and a ton of data that would take us thousands of hours as human beings to go through and instantaneously kind of get you some perspective on that. So I'm assuming you're probably using some of those tools. Has that changed over the last probably 6 to 12 months?
Oh my goodness, it has changed. I mean, I don't think there's a single industry, even businesses that don't want to deal with AI are having to deal with AI. Yes, it's changed a lot. But here's the deal. I think the danger that we run into that is where we start not only losing confidence in our leaders, because
Mm.
it's, I can no longer make this decision. Let me see what AI says, what decision I should do. So then,
Mm.
really, who is really running the business? So I still am 100% committed to the governance of the organizations, equipping those leaders and having especially the confidence and being able to utilize the group learned, overall the culture that really dictates those tools. The other part that I'm seeing with the tools again is not only the lack of confidence, but really having to use the subject matter and their experience. You still, at the end of the day, the human has to be the one that makes a decision. The human
Mhm.
does need to know enough. There's certain things that I see it come out, it's like, hey, it doesn't feel quite right. If some people may call it gut, some people may call it like, hey, just like, I just annoying, I know, but that also comes with experience. That also comes as something that needs to be transferred down. So yes, the tactical aspect can be done with the AI tools, and it should be, right? I mean, we want higher level thinking, but that higher level thinking still, the governance and the authority belongs to the human. And that is where I'm very animate about that. I'm able to, like, the leaders, and not look at AI as like, oh, something that I just don't have to do. Just like you wouldn't just hire somebody and let them do their own thing. And don't do look at AI. Well, I just got it. My AI agents just, they're gonna do it. We programmed it and everything's gonna go right. It's not.
Mhm.
You have to know. You have to have your measurements. You have to have your things in place. Again, the tool is for the human, and we have to have organizations still be human centric in a way where we can still govern those decisions that are being made throughout the entire organization.
I love the old saying of inspect what you expect, right?
Oh,
Yeah, so it's interesting. I learned that a long time ago, and I caught that. And a lot of things that you do, right? I'm a commercial banker by trade. I deal with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, typically 5 to 150 million dollars in top line revenue. And they're looking to grow from 5 to 15, from 15 to 30, from 30 to 100. And yeah, little things may tweak, and this new technology may help you in certain aspects, but you've got to be able to inspect what you expect, right? So really interesting stuff. So last thing, a couple things before we end the podcast is I was intrigued by because I think a lot of people don't realize that collaboration is a big deal in business, and especially when you get into this kind of consulting coaching world. You write a book and you've got all this subject matter expertise, but you talked about alignment with the right people, this professor that's a super genius at certain things on the financial side. What does that look like for billing wise, right? Invoicing your clients. How did you start to learn the rhythm of, okay, hey, this project is going to take, professor, this person, and myself. Let's go as a team, and here's what I need to charge for that. What does that kind of look like for you, or are you redefining it, on a time by time basis?
Well, I think when there's a certain milestone we can look at, right? I mean, if you start looking at like, for example, the apps and Apple, right, is the 60/40, then you start looking at the 70/30, and as far as like even compensation parts. So it definitely is something that is fluid in the sense of there sometimes the lead or just the referral, this essentially is almost like a referral fee, right? Where it's like a 20%, 25%. So you start looking at percentages like that. I think a lot of it is the involvement that from both parties, but also the opportunities, right? So there, for example, I have somebody that they have a tool, an assessment. So I'm not going to be running that tool. I'm not interested in getting certified in that assessment. So I am perfectly fine with them running that, and hey, the assessments, that's your deal. But I'm still able to have that. There's still the customer in a sense is my main customer, and is something that if it's mutually agreed, hey, this is really going to be helpful for them. Absolutely, you take that part, especially when it's proprietary. It's something that is good. I think we have to think in when it comes to partnerships. Also, there's an abundance, and you'll have a very much different outlook in how people deal with partnerships for when they come at it with from a scarcity mindset versus an
Mhm.
abundant mindset. The scarcity mindset would just want to protect and run everything, and they want to control the uncontrollables, which you really can't when you're talking about contractors. When you're talking about partnership, I mean that's the reason why you're contractors. So you have to look at it always with the abundance and knowing that. And I love this from Zig Ziglar. Is what that you can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And
Mhm.
when you're talking about collaborations, there's certain doors that you have access to that they may not be fully yours, but because of the mindset of abundance, you're able to bring in people that are going to be really help the customer, really being customer minded first. That is going to help them. And later on, they'll have an opportunity to also pay you back in that sense. They may have a referral where you're able to really serve that customer more. So I think it has to be looked at that way. What is the end goal? For that person? What is the result that you're looking for that and the involvement of the different parties? Sometimes there have been times where I've even, I'm a keynote speaker and I'm not the right speaker for that event, but I do
Mm.
need somebody who's the right speaker for that event. And I'm able to like, once we have the discovery call, say, I know somebody. I will send them over to that instead of trying to like, sure, let me do it. Because the main thing is to serve that audience first. Now that
Mhm.
speaker, they sometimes, they've done 20%, 25% referral fee. Like I've done it for other people, 25, 20%, but then that's their customer. I think again, once is knowing your lane because it's not just about, and that goes with the scarcity mindset. Sometimes you just want to say yes, 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 yes to everything. And then you're running on these fumes and then you're really out of your zone. And next thing you know, you've been saying yes to everything and you really don't know what your core is. That
Mm.
makes it to not be operating in your purpose. You're not really operating at your best and you're not being fulfilled. Again, it goes to having fun, having excitement in what we do, growing in our strength zone, and being abundant and being humble. And really a confident leader is able to invite other people to the table. And that's going to work for all. It honestly is, especially for my solopreneurs. Because I mean, I've run into both, right? run into a lot of people that want to take everything, or just like, hey, you'll get a little 5%, and they'll take the 95%. It's like, you know, there have been times, right? I mean, you start looking at as an entrepreneur, you can wake up unemployed every day. Essentially, you're making a case for like, hey, this is how I can serve you. But really, the aligning with people that have that abundant mentality and understanding, like, hey, we really want to do what's going to be best for this customer. Really, is going to be what's best for our community, for our ecosystem. Because when they win, we win. When I'm able to refer somebody that does a really good job, I'm going to look good.
Hmm.
I'm gonna be the one, and then they may come for me for something else. They may come for me like, hey, this other thing. But when you're able to surround yourself with good people that really want to serve the customer, it's really the percentages. I think, in a sense, they're very important, but they become secondary also because if you're thinking the long game versus the short transactional part, when you're playing the long game, the sustainable game, doing good business and looking at percentages on things that are, how they're working out and doing good for the people that refer you as well is really going to take you a long way, for profitability and sustainability.
So it's interesting, right? In your world, there's a lot of confidence and trust that you have to have, right? Especially when you're referring, right? And I think a lot of people don't know how to equate that. So could you give us a little bit of insight to go a little bit deeper on this same pattern sharing that you're doing? When you think about vetting the referrals, the people that you're going to do business with, and then also billing it based on that referral fee, what kind of mechanisms do you have control of, right? So the vetting side to who you're referring to, and then once they engage with that referral that you put together, what's the mechanism for you to be able to still control that cash flow of the referral fee coming back to you?
So there's a couple of ways, right? I mean, well, first of all, is the relationship that you have with the end user.
Mm,
It's making sure that, again, that they know, right? Because you're still positioning yourself as a partner with them. Let me find you the correct partner for doing this type of work. So one is building that relationship so that they still remember you, so that, hey, when you talk to them, tell them that Hannah told them to talk to them, right? I mean, so
hmm
you already have a way that, like, hey, when they say they come from me, there's an agreement with that part. Affiliate is a way that people do this, right? Like, okay, use my affiliate code, or you may even have your own, and which is very simple to do. Even like the way that you redirect to somebody's site, they're using your own link. And then the people can even see that if you're just talking like, hey, this person came to their website and started looking at their services through my link. And there's a
hmm
to be able to track that. Another one, even with the promos, even I think there's something that I've done with different organizations, even not just only individuals, that, hey, if they come in, which is if you go back to marketing, the way it was from like when you would get even direct mail or things like use code blah blah blah, and the same thing, hey, use code for this, my, people that come from this way, you get a percentage off, they'll give you an extra thing, or tell me when you contacted them and I'm going to send you my free book or my free latest report. But there's something attached to that as well, to be able to not only encourage them to go visit the site, to be able to start that conversation with them, which can be trackable, right? Whenever somebody has that coupon, whenever somebody has that code, but also it still builds that relationship with you, because you still want to be able to give them that case study or that book or something they have in memories with you, so that they'll think of you, the customer, when the opportunity comes for you to be able to serve them. So affiliate, working some sort of affiliate code, also making sure that the client is using you, like, hey, that they'll, and again, it's not only making that introduction, having those emails, but it's good service, right? It's like almost like a white glove service. Let me make that introduction for you, or tell them, if you tell them that Hannah sent you a Hardnomics, you came through Hardnomics, they'll do this extra thing for you. So having those things into place, again, you're building that relationship, the tracking, again, in the trust, depending on the partnership, right? I mean, you have Some of them that may be one-offs, like for example, like keynote speakers. I'm not necessarily going to be working with a group of keynotes, but there may be one-offs, right? So it's even following up, making those introductions. But versus somebody like I talked to you with my professor, where we already have our set percentages placed for, like 1 day engagement, 2 day engagements, if there's pre-work, if there's post-work, who does the pre-work, who does the post-work, because some of the things are not just like, hey, you're going to show up on that day, but there may be some surveys or assessments that need to be done in place. So are they using his tool? Are they using my tool? So those things are already set in place, so they can be a bit more structured with that. But you just gotta look at what, in business is the same way, right? When you work with contract workers versus employees, versus
Mhm.
when you're bidding for even government grants, when you're bidding for funding grants, even. I mean, like there's certain ways, like, okay, what am I, how am I going to track this? And there are different ways in working with it. And the same thing, even if you're bidding on a job, because and that's the wonderful thing about collaboration is then your experience is all aggregated. And when your experience is all aggregated, then suddenly instead of 5 years experience in this sector, you have a combined 30 years experience instead
Mm.
of having had, 50 clients in this particular thing. Suddenly you can combine, hey, we have served over 300 clients. So there's a power very much in collaboration, especially when you're talking about going for those higher bids, going for some government bids, for those of you that do government contracting, going with a subprime, because then your capabilities now become part of their capabilities. And there's
Mm.
a lot of power in that.
Interesting, interesting. So yeah, no, there's a dynamic to it, right? And that's the beauty of watching this podcast GO4CEO community, seeing Hannah and what she does and collaborating with her and getting a chance to get to know her and what they've done with Heartnomics and all that good stuff. So, as we end the podcast, we typically go through CEO, right? So client experience, engagement, and operational excellence. And you kind of touched on all of them in some ways today. But if you think about from a value proposition, high level, 30 to 60 seconds, right? Client experience, what could people expect when they do business with your company and your business?
They're going to be loved. That's why I love it. Love and excellence. So client experiences that they're going to feel good. They're going to have the emotional intelligence that goes with that, but also the operational systems that go along to make their vision a reality.
Awesome. And then engagement, right? A lot of times, leaders, I love to ask them on this podcast when we say, hey, are you a break bread person? Do you like to go to dinner? Are you a breakfast or do you do retreats with your clients? Do you do skydiving, as an example, right? So, what are ways that people could expect when they're engaging with you from your independent contractors to your clients to just friends? What's kind of the style that Hannah has for engagement?
Well, I like to listen and I like to have fun. So one of my favorite things is dancing, and I think in dancing is such a great leadership experience because there's a constant communication going on when you dance, either for fast or slow. We're going this way, we're going that way, and for that it takes a lot of ability to build that rapport, the ability to be able to really see you. So in the engagement part is I know both how to follow and how to lead. And I think of when we're talking about partnerships, there's times where you have to listen, you have to just look at what's going on, but also be able to create that spark that for that customer for that engagement, and really make a safe space. For me, the main thing is making a safe space to where you can be curious and explore different ideas in a place where it's judgment free. And it's okay as long as we can learn from our mistakes, we'll walk through that right away. But a safe space is the main thing.
All right, so personal question, just because I'm Colombian and I like to hear this. Is it salsa, merengue, bachata, country line dancing? Like, what's your vibe? Which one do you like? What's that?
Salsa, merengue, reggaeton, of course, but no, salsa is.
All right, awesome. Well, there you go. So, if you see her on the dance floor, always ask, right, politely, "Hey, can I have this dance?" Right, and go out
Yeah.
and. But it is such a rhythmic scenario, right? Like you see some couples, man, that just move and flow, and it's such a beautiful art. And then obviously, sometimes it takes a little bit initial steps to get to know someone when you're dancing with them. So.
Gosh, and the dancing does tells you so much. For example, I just went to Buenos Aires on a transformational trip. We were
Wow.
training leaders there, and we got, one of the things was we had to learn the tango, of course.
Oh,
But in the tango, I didn't know that the male always faces forward, the female never does. So it's like complete trust. Like you will never, because in salsa merengue you can go either
yeah.
way, back and forth. No, the partner never has a look. You never look at where you're going. You have to complete trust and understand even like the all the other signals that you're talking about. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing when
Uh,
you're talking about leadership, because I just didn't even know the rule of this dance. And really the trust, and that's what you're saying, like all this tango, the one partner is always blinded to what direction they're gonna go
yeah.
completely. But dancing to me is, you have to know when to lead, you have to know when to follow, you have to know when to go fast, when to go slow, in a rhythm. And that's, I think that's completely, that's what leadership in a nutshell. You gotta be in
Yeah, no,
rhythm.
I love it. I love it. You know, like my mom, full Colombian, definitely loved to dance, and she was always very encouraging. Hey, get out there, do this, stuff. So it's part of my life, the dancing side. So last one is operational excellence. When you think about the tools that you're using right now, the way that you're staying connected with your clients or just organized, any tools that you're using in your business from operational excellence.
Well, first of all, calendar.
Okay.
But no, operational excellence. Um, we can be bombarded with tools, but you really have to know
Mhm.
what are the tools that you need. Operational excellence to me is not about having more, it's about having less, especially when in a world where you have an app for everything. So, operational excellence, again, is not about not only the adoption of tools that are going to help us, but really, in a way, the burning away of things that we're no longer going to use, and they have to be simultaneous. You cannot just keep on adding and adding, and we'll get to the other things later. We'll see which one works. No, you got to have that plan, because it's kind of like a house, right? You keep on buying stuff and you don't get rid of stuff, you're going to have a huge room that you cannot walk into. So, and I see that especially affecting sales teams. So many apps, so many things. So operational excellence is one that is both looking at the processes that are for the things that need to get done, but also you're looking at the systematic impact of those processes when implemented and who all is going to be impacted by that. So looking at the tools, excellence again is going to require not perfection, but it's going to require the ability to be able to catch those mistakes. So the best way also when looking at tools is, how, if this is not working for us, how will we know? And if it is working for us, how will we know? And everybody needs to be able to answer it the same way.
I love it. I love it. I've recently had a bunch of managed IT guys and gals on the podcast, and they talk about their trying to revolutionize their own industry because a lot of those people come into a company and just tech stack, tech stack, tech stack, like this next and next, and they've been minimizing that to exercise that fluidity, right, and better sense of kind of not having to use 12 things, use one or two things, and master that and make it really good. So tell people how to get a hold of you. What's the best way to interact with you? If they want to book a discovery call or something to interact with you, what's kind of the socials and everywhere to get a hold of you?
Sure. Well, thanks for asking. LinkedIn is probably my main one. I'm very active there under Hannah Bauer. Also, you can go on my website, heartnomics.com. And the Heartnomics is the economy of the heart. So it's spelled HEARTNOMICS.com. And I have there an assessment that you all can use. An individual one is a free one for alignment. So for those of you that are interested in the alignment part, how am I doing with my heart leadership? There's a nice pulse check there for you all.
I love it. I love it. Well, hey, alignment is chapter 2 in the book, the 4A formula, untangle any challenge and think like a CEO. So just came out in October. Thank you so much, Hannah, for coming on the Go4CEO channel. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, this is the moment. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share this conversation that Hannah was on. And we're looking forward when it posts out there into the social media world that you interact with Hannah and get a chance to get to know her even more on her website, on LinkedIn, and many other different places. So thank you so much, Hannah, for coming on the Go4CEO channel.
Thanks for having me.